Welcome in, Campo and Joe. I tell you what, whenever we open up our Campo and Joe, you see a little excitement on our face, right? We're usually fired up to talk Jaguar football. I don't know whether we're more fired up today, but there's a hell of a lot to get into. Joe C. from XL Primetime, our head coach, Dave Campo. Coach, Happy New Year, first off. I don't know whether, like what was it a couple weeks ago? I said, Merry Christmas. Was it a good Christmas? Yeah. Because the Jaguars got a win under the tree. Now.
Yeah. Well, all of that was good.
Yeah. Now they got maybe one thing they wanted and one thing did not happen.
That's what it kind of looks like. And by the way, before we get started, we're not, as a burial of this season, we are not bringing our bobbleheads in here until some more positive stuff gets going.
All right, I'm not going to argue with you because I love our bobbleheads. We're what do you call it? We will pimp our own stuff out when we can.
Yeah, we'll get it going. Yeah.
But hopefully there'll be some enthusiasm in the offseason. It'll be a busy offseason, at least to start. But we're going to spend most of our time today talking about the firing of Doug Pederson and the retaining of Trent Baalke, and probably won't even get into the game like we normally would, looking back at the loss to the Colts in overtime. But we'll do a lot of that stuff when we go forward in the offseason. But let's just deal with the reality that Black Monday came. Shad Khan made a decision. I am letting go of Doug Pederson. I don't think too many people were shocked by that, but they were semi-shocked and really ticked off that Trent Baalke keeps his job as GM and will be the guy that will ultimately make or help make the decision on who the next head coach is. What was your reaction?
Well, and not only our fans and the media here, but national media had the same reaction. I think when you look at it, you think, and I'm a big proponent, which, from experience, being the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, if the GM and the head coach are not on the same page, you will not be successful. Whoever's making the majority of the decisions,
right?
Whoever the other guy is has got to have the same vision.
Yeah.
They don't have to like each other necessarily. They don't have to, the ego doesn't have to get involved in it, but the vision has to be there.
It's funny. A couple of things that Shad Khan said coming out of in the presser and some of the reaction to it was comical that he said the GM is basically there to help the head coach. We're all here to basically help the head coach is what he said. Well, then charge the GM with doing a better job of helping the head coach. You said in your relationship when you were in Dallas, it wasn't the best of situations because Jerry Jones had like 7 business cards he could hand out. He was the owner, the president, the general manager, and the head coach firer. Because it's not easy when you don't have alignment.
Well, and to be honest with you, we really don't know who did what over there. I mean, to be honest with you, who hired the coordinators? Who, they said, Shad said there were a lot of good around here, and he brought up the fact that number one, they were predictable, and number two, the defensive was worse than it was last year. Well, who's making that decision?
Exactly.
The guy that he's keeping here, is he in charge? Who's in charge? To me, it looks like he's running the show.
Yeah, I was joking yesterday on XL Primetime. We played a soundbite from Trent Baalke coming back from break, and I said, there's your owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars, because it felt like they were the scripts were flipped, that the guy that was in the power chair was Trent over Shad. I'll just say one thing about the presser as well as a whole. I thought Shad Khan embarrassed himself. I felt like Shad, as an owner, a brilliant man, a self-made man that came into this country with little, $500 as the story is told, and he he's risen to great fame and fortune. He is in a position to take control of the opportunity to make a big swing hire, and he's tried it before with Urban Meyer. That was a complete and total fail. But this one, it looked like he wasn't prepared for the press conference, Coach.
Well, the only things he answered quickly were things that he had notes on.
Yeah.
And who's giving him the notes? Is Trent giving him the notes? I guarantee you, he didn't come up with the offense was predictable. and he didn't come up with the fact that the defensive was, well, he might have come up, but somebody told him, this is what's going on here, and you have to look at it as being Trent Baalke.
Yeah, it's funny because I've gone from what I described before as a really plum job in the NFL because you have what is described as a hands-off owner,
right?
And a guy who the only time he's hands-on, he's writing checks. He's saying, hey, you want a free agent? You want this? You want that? He's writing checks, and then he's hands-off. Well, he's now created an environment where he feels the feeling is he's an absentee owner, that he's not engaged. And somewhere between him not engaged and Jerry Jones, we just keep using him as an example because of coaches many, many years in Dallas, that's a guy that's maybe wants too much power too often. Holy cow, Shad Khan could have taken this as an opportunity.
Well, first of all, it starts, there was a kind of, the press conference to me reeked a little bit of Urban Meyer. Mm-hmm. Here's a guy that is firing a guy, and he's in a press conference the next day, and he's in Michigan.
Right.
He's not here in Jacksonville.
No.
Now, again, I mean, he could be anywhere he wants. He could be in Europe.
But the appearance.
But the appearance of it is that that he I don't know how they fired him. They were on the tarmac till got here at 4:00 in the morning. Mm-hmm. When did he fire him? Did he fire him over the phone? Yeah. I mean, there's some real questions there. And believe me, I'm of the mindset of all of us that Shad Khan has done some good things for the city.
Yeah.
But what's his deal with the football team?
Right.
That's the key.
I give him a lot of credit, just as you do, and I just feel like you can easily attack this thing in a lazy, disinterested kind of way and say, I'm going to get rid of that guy. This guy is my confidant, Trent Baalke, so he reports to me, and so far he's kissed my rear end enough that I'm going to keep him, which may be what is happening. Not quite sure. At least the intel that I have is that that's what he is. I describe him as a little bit of a snake in the grass with his time in San Francisco, from what I have been told, and those that have been around that organization know well of what he did. I have been told numerous things as far as his relationship with Urban Meyer and how he handled that here, and then obviously what we see now. I just don't understand why Shad would not look at a poor product, and if you're going to get rid of one guy, not get rid of both.
Yeah, I thought his answer about, you can take it a number of different ways. His answer about clean house was the worst of it.
It was terrible.
First of all, the question could have been asked with more detail.
Right.
Okay. But when you say clean house, the whole press conference was about a firing. So you're not talking about firing the doctors and the concession stand and people and all that stuff. Yeah. You're talking about the GM and the head coach.
That's it. That's the essential.
That's the administration that you're talking about. You're not talking about firing him.
Yeah.
You're talking about the guys that are directly involved with what's going on with this football team. To talk about analytics and all this other stuff. If I'm a general fan, I'm livid today.
Well, we heard from plenty, and you do hear this quite often. Whenever a team's bad, I'm canceling my tickets. I'm not renewing my tickets. I'm not coming back. I'm done. We hear a lot of that. But in this particular case, and I did talk to people who I know 100% are season ticket holders and have been for a long time, that they're sitting there going, you expect me to re-up and put more money into this madness and misery that the classic one I always refer to, the original NFG, who is a diehard Jaguar fan, and he's watching an away game in his living room, and he's cussing and screaming, and he's doing this and that, and his wife walks in, she goes, you told me you enjoy this. You told me you're a fan. Is this really what you want? And then on top of all of that, not make the change that fans wanted to see made.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I can commiserate with that gentleman because my wife has called me a lunatic watching these guys, and I'm looking at it with more of a critical eye than a lot of the fans are. The fans are, and I'm not disrespecting fans,
right?
But the inner workings. I know what's going on, and I'm watching a game, and I'm frustrated, and I border on being a lunatic, and I'm sure there's a bunch of you guys out there that are the same way.
Yeah, and when they're writing checks, it hurts because you're not spending money on something else that you could just so you can go
and it's expensive.
Yeah, and it's expensive. It's pricey, and it's going to get pricier with the stadium. But let's just use this one thing as a segue real quick into the actual game action. And I want to make this one, I think it's an important point. Just because Trent Baalke was not fired doesn't mean Doug didn't deserve to be fired.
Right.
Okay? And I want to make that clear because, and I want you to kind of follow what I'm saying here, Coach, because you got at least some intel, evidence, however you want to describe it. This football team had enough decent pieces, and Doug Pederson could have fought for himself and challenged Trent Baalke and said, if you don't give me an offensive line, I'm going to let everybody know that we can't run the ball because we don't have the personnel. He could have fought for himself. He did not. He is a loyal, super nice guy. But the function of this football team, Coach, the inability to make big plays when they needed to, the inability to get a third down, like we always say, get a 3rd and 1, stop a 3rd and 1, and then look like it had fire and intensity and organization. Those are all problems that fall at the feet of the head coach. So
Correct.
I do believe he did not do a good enough job to keep his job.
Yeah, and I'm with you 100%. I mean, I was of the mindset that they might give him one more year because of the 9-8, 9-8. But when you really look at it towards the end, I was sliding, into there has to be change made because you cannot dismiss 5 out of the last 23 game wins. Yeah. That's the head coach has to go.
Yeah.
The general manager, you have to look at it and you say, well, what's our roster look like? Because Shad said he supports the coach. Mm-hmm. That's what he does.
Yeah. He
doesn't call plays. He's not on the field.
He may want to be, but
he puts the guys out there, and to me it's got to be a collaboration. Mm-hmm. They say it's a collaboration. It is a collaboration from the standpoint that everybody has input.
Right.
But one of those two is the guy that makes the final decision, and I have to believe now, after Trent still being here, it's him that makes the final decision.
It's incredible if you add up a handful of things, not zeroing in 2 consecutive years on improving the interior part of the offensive line, and couple that with not improving the interior defensive line.
Right.
So when he did make a decision, he goes and signs Eric Armstead, a 10-year vet, to a $12 million deal, and you're thinking, all right, I can justify. I at the time said, you know what? If he's bringing in Savage, Morse, Darby, Eric, I'm missing one of the guys, but if he's bringing in veteran leadership with playoff experience, I don't mind that. I think we're going to plug these guys in. And you know me, Coach, I had been just ranting and raving about the interior part of the defense. So I thought Eric Armstead was going to come in and be a big part of the interior defense. Now, Yoda, as we like to call him, will insert this soundbite from Eric Armstead in the locker room right now after the season is over and basically says he plans to play inside next year. I went, what? What did you think? Let's play it. All right, what did you think?
Well, I'm like you. I mean, I thought it was ridiculous. When you make a statement that one guy's saying that the only reason he came here was because he didn't want to play inside. He wanted to be an outside guy. You don't go get another pass rusher as a backup. You get rid of the guy that you originally brought in, Gibson, to be the third pass rusher. Whether or not he was a great one or not is immaterial, but he was the guy they brought in. Mm-hmm. They trade him because they've got Armstead. And then at the end of the year, after Armstead did not play very well out there, period. Now he comes in and says, first of all, he doesn't know who the coach is going to be. He's telling people, I'm going inside next year. And that's what I wanted to do from the beginning.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's dysfunction there between, what he's saying and what the organization is saying.
And didn't that essentially say that if he's telling whoever the next guy is, we don't know who it is, that I'm going inside, that means he told this guy I'm going outside.
Yeah, who knows what the bottom line was.
Well, Trent originally drafted Eric Armstead, one of his shining moments in first-round picks for San Francisco. So I wouldn't doubt he gave him a parachute to end his career, a big money contract. I wouldn't doubt Eric Armstead said, hey, Trent, I'll come and sign, but I don't necessarily love the idea of my body being beaten up one more year inside.
That's possible.
Will you tell that defensive guy, whoever he is, I need to move out? I would not doubt that for a moment.
Yeah, there's no question. It's just part of the dysfunction, in my opinion. All the free agents we brought in here. I mean, I was a fan of Savage.
So was I.
As a nickel. Mm-hmm. Because of his quickness and all that kind of stuff. Once they put him back at safety, he was the same guy he was at safety at Minnesota.
Yeah, Green Bay.
Green Bay wasn't very good.
Yeah, and he obviously he didn't stay healthy, which is never good. But he had a red jersey on from the moment he walked into Jacksonville, and then was in and out of the lineup because of it. And he's a former first rounder. There were a total of 12 first rounders on this football team, either those that were drafted or those that were signed or traded for. You can't be this pathetic with that many players that were, quote, first rounders. Now, you could say Eric Armstead long in tooth and certainly not playing hard, so that's his knock. But the other guys that you brought in that were former first rounders, you need to see them. Darnell Savage was one of them.
Yeah.
You need to see them make plays.
Yeah, all I can say is, and I've been asked this a number of times from people that I talk with about, is this a job that these guys that are, they're going to be interviewing that they think is a good job, and we already know the Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to say he's in the top 15. I don't care, whether he's generational or not. He's in the top
half quarterback.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's not bad. Okay. So that's probably a plus.
Yeah.
But when you look at this team, and this may be a plus for as being optimistic for Trent Baalke, when you're that close, even though that's the way this league is, when you are within a touchdown or within 5 points of 13 games, that means the overall talent of the team is close. Now, have they been great drafting to where they picked them? And Trayvon Walker's a perfect example. Should he have taken Hutchinson? And I wasn't convinced on that, but he's proven that Hutchinson is a better pass rusher than Trayvon Walker. Yeah. Trayvon Walker would be a better 3 technique, in my opinion, than he is an outside guy, even though he did well and he is a good enough player.
He's a good player
to help us win. There's no doubt about that.
Not a top draft pick.
So I guess my point is, when you look at it from outside, other than the fact is whether or not you want to be with the GM or whether the dysfunction of the whole organization is, it's a good-looking job, in my opinion. So somebody's going to take this job.
Oh, I think it's funny because there have been at least some either reporting or thoughts in the social media world that it's not a non-starter, but certainly a detriment to taking the job, knowing that Trent Baalke is in the building. Right. And I get that, and I would just at least tell all of Duval that if you're talking about Ben Johnson, Liam Cohen, let's go Joe Brady, a couple of other guys that have been thrown out there right now that are hot names, particularly on the offensive side, is that do you come in here and have to marry up your philosophy and your ideas with a guy that may not agree with you, and then you have to relent and let the GM make that decision? Well, there may only be 32 of these gigs, but if you don't work out in the first one and it doesn't go well, your chances of getting hired again go way down.
Absolutely. And again, I liken it back to my situation in Dallas, because when you look at it, I was a career coach in the league for 10 years. But as a head coach, it was my first time.
Right. And you were not a personnel guy that you wanted to say, hey, I need this, this, and this.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, that is what a young guy coming in here is. You're looking at a guy that obviously has the owner's ear that you have to deal with. So who's making the decisions?
And when Shad announces that both will report directly to him, what does that even mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't get it. I think that there's some dysfunction, and that's going to be an issue. But at the same time, I got a quarterback that is in the top half, and I've got talent enough and a lot of draft picks that I can fix this, and that may override. And then guys out there, fans, whatever, just remember one thing. I hear that Ben Johnson doesn't interview very well. So who knows if you're making the right decision until you're in the room with him and you can, get an idea what's going on.
Yeah, he's been described as a very, very bright offensive mind, but not someone that necessarily is destined to be that guy. He's the hot hand right now because of what they've been able to do. But Dan Campbell, just as an example or a counter to that argument, Dan Campbell was not a popular hire.
Oh, absolutely.
That cycle.
Yeah. How about Callahan out at Seattle?
Yeah.
Is it Seattle?
No, Brian Callahan's in. Oh, Mike McDonald. In Seattle.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah. McDonald
and Brian Callahan.
Nobody wanted either one of them.
Right. Brian Callahan, not so hot in Tennessee, but they decided to keep him. Yeah. They fire their general manager, Rand Carthen, which we'll touch on in 1 second.
Right.
But you made me think of one thing. And coaches, even though they may not come in step with the general manager, they can have a major impact on a football program. The Seattle Seahawks, up, down, uneven. We all know that. Pete Carroll, his run there, which was great, came to an end, and Mike McDonald goes up there, and he promptly takes them to 10 wins.
Right.
And Geno Smith also had an uneven year. I don't know that you would put him in the top half of quarterbacks.
Right.
They went up and down injury-wise with a lot of guys that were and were not available. Metcalf, Walker, we can go on and on. They got to 10 wins. Go to Jim Harbaugh. He walks right back into the National Football League. He makes Justin Herbert that much better.
Right.
They have no Williams, Allen, Eckler. You can go on with the guys that they had to say goodbye to because of salary cap constraints. He just promptly puts them right back in the playoffs. Brandon Staley, like a bumbling idiot, could have had L.A. in the playoffs back-to-back years, did not do it. And we all know what happened here, thank God. They couldn't score. But imagine Justin Herbert being 27 up and Jim Harbaugh being his head coach.
Yeah.
Do you think he'd ever let a team come from 27 down to beat him? And that's what Harbaugh has done up there.
Yeah,
or down there.
And on the flip of that, though, that's what Doug Pederson did with this team. They went from
3 to 9.
Whatever it was, to playoffs the first year.
Yeah.
Now, these guys that are out there, they have to repeat it.
Exactly.
And I never was set on Houston. I felt that everybody was going to come back to the pack, and they did. If the Colts had been worth a dime, or we'd have been worth a dime, it would have been a battle at the end.
Yeah, you're right.
And everybody thought, they're going to be the next, Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought them up because D'Amico and maybe C.J. Stroud more than anything else came back to the pack.
Right.
But the other one is Sean Payton, second year in Denver.
Well, and my whole point is that guys, they make the pick. It's got to be the GM and the head coach being on the same page. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
They can't have the ego of one more than the other, and that's what concerns me more about this job than it does the ability to bring them back to relevance.
And I guess I'll use, if I can just kind of zero in on a couple of things, the LA Chargers not necessarily known for their front office prowess.
Right.
They were able to make a good decision, and they said goodbye to people, and probably under the direction and advice of Harbaugh, and it's worked out well. Mike McDonald went up to Seattle and had to basically walk into a setting where a GM was already in control. You can go, I think it's George Payton is his name. I think it's George Payton. Anyway, he's the general manager in Denver.
Right.
He first hired Nate Hackett, and it was an absolute disaster.
Right.
And he's still there, and he made the right decision, at least for now, in getting Sean Payton. Well, Payton came in there and said, you know what, we're going to do some things here. Yeah. We're going to say goodbye to Russ. We're going to eat that money, and we're still going to figure out a way to win. So you can do it.
Yeah, and look at Payton now.
Yeah.
I mean, he's Bill Parcells.
Yeah.
Okay? There's a difference. You know, a young guy coming in, you don't know what you're getting. With Sean Payton, you know what you're getting coming in there. And I don't think that he was going to allow whoever the general manager was to dictate what he was going to do.
No, he was going to call the shot. And he found a place where he thought he could go get his quarterback, not necessarily have the quarterback, but go get the quarterback.
Right.
So real quick, as we're close to wrapping this up, there are a lot of different ways you can do this, and you can see hope in a lot of other NFL cities on how quickly they turned it around. So it's not impossible.
Right.
But the fact that Shad Khan did not send out this message of, hey, you need to take a good long look at this franchise, this operation, this town, everything that we offer, because we want the best of the best for our fans. He could have said that.
Yeah.
He did not. It's still a good job, like you just described, having the quarterback and some draft capital. But I'm still ticked off at the way this thing unfolded.
Yep.
And I don't know whether they're going to be able to recover from this easily. I hope they can for the fans.
And to be honest with you, I expected Shad to be a little bit more upset and frustrated and let it come out that we're going to get this thing fixed.
Yeah,
he didn't come out with that at all. So
the only thing that
we'll see.
He used the word predictable. The only thing that was predictable was that he was not going to get rid of the guy that is his eyes and ears inside the building.
Right. And
that was predictable.
At least when he said he talked to the coordinators and what's the Ethan?
Yeah,
those are the guys he talked to. I mean, come on.
Real quick, we mentioned Rand Carthon in the Tennessee Titans. So they've gone through a crazy 3 years. They now own the number 1 pick. They're not going to let the general manager that was there get that number 1 pick. Rand Carthon, former Gator, by the way, ran Mike Vrabel. And then after getting rid of him, he gets canned after hiring Brian Callahan, and now someone else is going to come in and take the number 1 pick. So it's bad here in Duval, but there's some dysfunction in a lot of other NFL cities. The New York Football Jets, they still need to take a look at what they're going to do, GM, head coach, and quarterback as far as that goes, because who knows what's going to happen with Aaron Rodgers. But if they can use the draft capital, top 5 again,
right?
We'll do this a lot, but where's the number 1 area of concern right now for you?
Well, personally for me, it get me Graham from Michigan, a defensive interior guy that can do both. He can stop the run and he can rush the pass.
Yeah. Mason Graham, I like that. Pair of Masons inside is not a bad idea.
And I'm using him as an example. I don't know if there's somebody else. I haven't looked enough at the draft to say that there's somebody better than Graham out there. But that position is important in my mind. Okay,
and like we said, we'll do a bunch of it. But then give me a real quick thought on who you lean towards in the head coaching search. Because it believe me, it's wide open.
Yeah. You know what? I can't answer that one, Joe, and be honest with you, because I don't know the guys enough.
Me neither.
All I know is give me somebody that can take a little bit more control of what's going on.
You know, so I'll just say quickly, Ben Johnson has done a good job, and he's learned and seen a lot of good things.
Right.
They've been able to overcome injury. He's still been able to construct an offense where they can move the ball. Joe Brady, they collectively up in Buffalo said, you know what, Stefan, we'll live without you.
Yep.
And they said goodbye to him, to Morse, to key other pieces, and they've succeeded.
I think the guys that succeeded are the guys. I don't think that when I look at our offense, predictability, who knows?
Think it is.
I mean, but I promise you one thing. They did not have a mindset of running the football. This was a quarterback-oriented offense.
Right.
You look at Detroit, they run the football. You look at
better believe
Buffalo,
it.
they run the football. You look at Green Bay, they run the football.
L.A. too.
You look
The
at
Rams,
LA.
yeah.
You know, so to me, that's the guy you're looking at. And when you look at Ben Johnson, that's who he is.
Yeah. And Joe Brady brought the run back to Buffalo.
Joe Brady. Yeah. Right, exactly. Those two, to me, that's, if you ask me who I'm leaning towards, it's somebody that has a clear picture of how they're going to run the football and that they're going to get guys to fit that mold on offense. And on defense, they're going to stop the run, and they're going to have some discipline in the secondary. Whoever that guy is, that, you know, I think the guys that we're talking about, there are some of the guys that are like that.
God, discipline, man. Coaching, teaching, putting them in position, being innovative, being creating inspired play. All those things need to come in the form of a head coach. The other one, real quick, Liam Cohen, I love the idea of what he has done down in Tampa with Baker, but he's also had he's worked for three different organizations over a 5-year period, bouncing back and forth between Kentucky and L.A. and then to Tampa Bay. So I don't know, but he made Baker one of the most exciting players to watch this year.
Yeah, that's a reclamation project. Goff is a reclamation project. Yeah. Who else?
And I take Jason Light in a heartbeat because he's the GM in Tampa, because they went and got Bucky Irving way after this franchise were drafting running backs.
Right.
And that guy's a kick butt running back.
Right.
All right, Coach. We got plenty to look forward to, we hope, in this offseason. But after a 4-win, 13-loss season, we press on, and we'll see who the next head coach is. That will be the topic on Campo and Joe. Thanks for tuning in.